Obviously, AI is coming, it's coming quickly, it's ever changing. I think 4 books that are a must read. Number 1 is How to Win Friends and Influence People.
What are the good practices that somebody in a similar role should adapt to?
I'd love AI to be able to eliminate repetitive quality control work. That would save clients enormous amount of time. I think AI has tremendous potential for drafting. We are the best company in the space and look forward to anyone reaching out to me.
Welcome everyone to the second season of SEC Reporting Journal, brought to you by Finrep AI, a purpose-built AI for financial research and reporting. I'm your host Gana, dialing in from San Francisco. Today I have with me Mike Frohlich, Senior Vice President at Toppan Merrill. Mike is Business Marketing and Finance graduate from Yeshiva University. He was previously VP of Sales at Vintage Filings. Mike specializes working with corporations, private equity, investment banks, and law firms on capital market transactions by providing comprehensive document management, SEC filing, distribution, and print services. SPACs have been a major focal point for him, and he's experienced in providing financial print, filing, merger, and compliance services across entire SPAC lifecycle. Welcome to the podcast, Mike. Would you want to walk us through your own journey? How did you ended up coming to capital markets? And how would you describe what a filing and a document partner actually does in a deal?
Sure. Came in the industry 20 years ago, straight out of college. The founder of the business I joined, Vintage Filings at the time, was my neighbor in Teaneck, New Jersey, a guy, Shai Stern, who I'm very close with until today. He founded the business, was in the midst of selling the company to PR Newswire for around $60 million. I saw a great opportunity to join the company in sales. I loved people. I loved relationships. I loved the hustle. I was driven to make money, and I saw it as a great fit. I started in the summer and stayed there for 20 years, and here we are today. Vintage was actually acquired by multiple companies. We're now part of Toppan Merrill. We've gotten rebranded. Our company is a full-service financial printer, so we do the filing and the printing for public companies, i.e. the IPOs, M&A transactions, compliance filings. We're the execution partner that helps turn months of legal and accounting finance work and accurate SEC filings and ensure that it gets done timely and accurately.
You sit across hundreds of deals and issuers rather than an inside one. What does the panoramic view let you see something inside a single company's reporting that otherwise you would not have seen?
Sure. I get the opportunity to work with thousands of companies and experience thousands of transactions. It really gives me a perspective that others that will be involved in one transaction don't necessarily have. What I've seen is it's not really the size of the deal that changes whether a deal is going to be successful or not. It's more about the communication, the preparation, and having experienced partners in those deals. I start recognizing and seeing patterns before the clients do, and often will jump in there to assist them.
Most of these professionals today prepare and review these documents, and you're almost at the last mile there with respect to filing. Uh, where does that last mile often go wrong? And are there best practices that you would have for these filers who are fresh filers in the market?
I would say the last mile isn't usually a technology problem, it's late edits. You could have one legal change that will trigger updates and affects tables. It could affect the XBRL tagging, which changes page references, and then dozens of people will need to review that document. So managing those moving pieces under tight deadlines is where experience really matters most.
What separates a smooth filing from a 2 a.m. scramble before a deadline from where you sit?
I would say the smoothest deals all have one thing in common: planning ahead. Everyone knows their roles, decisions are made quickly, and communication is centralized. The difficult deals aren't necessarily more complicated, usually will suffer from late decision making and too many last minute revisions.
Okay. And what does first time filers and new public companies consistently underestimate about this filing and production process today?
I'd say they often underestimate how collaborative this process really is. It's not just the legal team, the finance team, it's the executives, the accountants, the outside counsel, underwriters, auditors, investor relations, filing specialists, all working together. So the earlier you have everyone on board and aligned, the smoother everything becomes.
Got it. Can you help us walk through what was the cycle of change from like financial printers to XBRL? What did that transition look like when you were actually in midst of that change being happening in the world?
Sure, it was definitely a tedious process. I joke around. It's a necessary evil for all of us. It's not necessarily a revenue driver, profit driver for us. It requires a lot of on-staff accountants, a lot of hours of diligence and work. So it was like learning anything new. Sometimes it's difficult. There was definitely a learning curve, but at Toppan Merrill, having the on-staff accountants and the expertise and the team there to support this process has helped us and our clients significantly through this XBRL process.
Got it. On SPACs, you have worked through the entire SPAC lifecycle. Can you walk our audience through the filing services seat, the IPO S1, DSPAC S4s, and proxy redemptions, and the reporting cascade after the close?
Yeah, so from our seat, we really support SPACs from start to finish. I always like to say we give that white glove service, that hand holding, that pricing of the smallest companies out there for the initial IPO. We could support the company throughout their compliance filings, and then we could handle such a large DSPAC that's out there. And we're a great partner throughout. But what you have with the SPACs is you start out with an S1 with a shell company, which is pretty simplistic, where we have a flat rate paid at closing for that process. Then comes compliance filings, pretty bare bones financials. Then you have the company will make an announcement to do a DSPAC. On that, that is a much more complicated transaction where you need someone with much more experience and expertise. And you have that S4 and that proxy. It becomes incredibly complex because you're in essence combining two businesses, extensive financials, forecast disclosures, and shareholder communications into one. After closing that, you now have a new publicly traded company, which then transitions into traditional SEC filings, 10Qs, 10Ks, 8Ks, proxies, and ongoing XBRL requirements. And we're involved throughout the entire life cycle of the SPAC into the DSPAC, and look forward to working with that new publicly traded company for decades to come.
Got it. And Mike, you had a front row seat to both the SPAC boom and the bust. What did boom look like from the production floor? And for the audience, could you help them understand what's the realistic state of SPAC activity in 2026?
So the SPAC boom was right in the midst of COVID. So while my kids were at home wearing masks, we were homeschooling. It was definitely a tough time, but business could not have been better. I've never seen anything like this in my 20 years in the industry. Saw deadlines were compressed, transaction volume exploded. Everyone in the industry was moving incredibly fast. Today, the market, I'd say, is much healthier. The volume's lower. The transactions you're seeing in the SPAC market are of higher quality with stronger companies and more disciplined investors.
God, what makes de-SPAC filings uniquely painful compared to a traditional IPO?
So I hit on this a bit earlier. When you have a DSPAC, you're dealing with combining two businesses, two sets of financials, two companies, many cooks in the kitchen, completely different systems, different advisors, timelines. There's significantly more coordination involved, more disclosures, many more moving parts than a traditional IPO.
From the production side, and you did mention earlier in the conversation, the last minute changes is a big problem. But where does these taggings typically break? And what do most issuers often get wrong about it?
So I'd say most of these issues aren't caused by the software itself. They're caused by the lack of communication. What I mean by that is when you have disclosures changing last minute in the process, the tagging has to change throughout the document. And that's why experienced XBRL specialists in reviewing the document, like we have on our team, are an integral role to this process.
Got it. From a core regulatory perspective, SEC has been expanding structured data requirements. From a vantage point of experience, how do you see this headed towards? And what should the issuers stop doing manually today?
I would say the SEC continues to move towards more machine readable data. Investors are increasingly consuming filings through technology rather than reading every single page. That means that structured data is becoming more and more important, not less.
Got it. Taking a point of view of capital markets, you work with corporates, private equity, investment banks, and law firms. How do priorities across these four differ when they sit around in the same deal? What should companies be aware about their priorities?
So it's interesting because everyone shares the same goal, but definitely has different priorities. Companies focus on telling their story, law firms focus on disclosure and compliance, investment banks focus on execution and timing, private equity firms focus on value creation and exit. Our job at Toppan Merrill is helping all those groups get to the finish line together.
Got it. Uh, what does the IPO and capital markets calendar feel like on the ground right now? How do you see some of these changes in terms of requirements impacting that?
So this is obviously ever changing, depending on when this podcast comes out, but I would describe it as selectively open. High quality companies with strong fundamentals are getting attention, but the market is much more disciplined than it was a few years ago. Preparation has become of utmost importance for these companies to get out.
Taking it to industry evolution and AI, which has been like the hot topic right now, you have watched this work evolve from printing to Edgar to inline XBRL. What has actually changed in how filings get produced, and what has stubbornly stayed the same?
So when I started in this business, pre-IPO companies would actually go to the printer for several weeks prior to doing an IPO and would meet at the printer and drafting that document. They'd sit there, the lawyers, the bankers, the auditors, the company and everyone would be there sitting and drafting that document. Nowadays, everyone's happy to be on Zoom. There isn't really that need as much to go to the printer. So that has definitely changed a lot over the last 20 years. Also, when I started, there was a much more of an emphasis on physical printing and volume of printing. Today, a lot of the focus is on style and design and making that more into a marketing piece for your customers. That's something that we do a phenomenal job with and helping companies redesign their proxy and annual report and make it look that much better. Additionally, today, everything has really gone digital, cloud-based, collaborative, and highly structured. What hasn't changed is the accuracy, the deadlines, and the trust. Capital markets is still all about confidence, relationships, something that we very much hold dearly and have.
In regards to AI, it has really entered into document creation and filing. Where do you see this genuinely helping the production and filing workflow? And where do you think it is overhyped?
I think AI has tremendous potential for drafting, document comparison, quality checks, and identifying inconsistencies. Where I think humans remain critical is judgment. Understanding context, materiality, and regulatory nuances still requires experienced professionals, as well as that ability to call someone, get on the phone, push the button, make those edits by phone. That reliability that you expect from a financial printer is still critical.
Got it. If AI could reliably take one part of filing production process off the table tomorrow, from your lens, what would you want it to be?
I'd love AI to be able to eliminate repetitive quality control work. If it could instantly identify inconsistencies across a 300-page document before a human would have to review, that would save clients enormous amount of time, allowing experts on our team to focus on high value work.
Michael, turning it to the role that you are involved with for last couple of decades, what are the good practices that somebody in a similar role should adapt to build trust and confidence with the companies, corporates, private equity, investment bankers, multiple stakeholders who are involved in this process, right? Looking at your own experience, what can people adapt to?
I'd say for people entering the industry, you want to build relationships. You want to be someone that people could trust under pressure, someone that's reachable 24/7, very quick to respond to clients, and always available. Technical skills can be taught. Reliability, responsiveness, and professionalism are what clients remember. For companies that are choosing a filing partner, don't simply look and say who's the cheapest. Ask who will answer the phone at midnight when something changes, who will be there on the weekend. That's where you really see the value of a true partner. And us at Toppan Merrill deliver that day and again.
Michael, somebody wanting to do what you do today, what can they learn from you? What are some of those lessons that you would want to educate our audience on?
I'd suggest number one, showing up every day, consistency, hard work ethic, and drive is of utmost importance. Additionally, you want to get yourself a mentor, someone in this space that you could look up to for guidance and advice. You want to attach yourself to people that know this business. Majority of my colleagues and folks on our customer service team have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. These folks are experts in the business. And a big reason why I'm still at my company today is the trust I have in my team. So developing that trust comes with time, and taking all those points and moving forward, I think would put them in the best position.
Got it. There's a lot of fear mongering of AI in terms of taking away the jobs. How do you see some of these functions being impacted basis on what you know by now? Obviously, there's a future that we cannot predict, but you're in your own learning. How do you see the impact of AI in this process of selling something to these companies? What should people be doing more of? What should they be actually be focusing? You did touch upon on judgment earlier in the conversation, but would love for you to like double down on that.
So obviously AI is coming, it's coming quickly, it's ever changing. There are a lot of people that utilize it out there to draft emails, send outreach emails, follow-ups. I personally like to write my own emails. I like that personal touch, that personal flavor. I don't think AI today has that. It may in the future. Additionally, I spoke about quality control, being able to review documents, adding speed and accuracy to the process. AI today is not 100%. Doing any of this work in AI still needs a human checkpoint. So as we move forward, I think some of these products will be able to speed things along, will help in the sales process, will help in the production process, but there will always be a need, as I said earlier, for someone to pick up the phone. The expertise and the knowledge that myself and my colleagues have doing this for north of 20, 30, 40 years is not able to be copied in AI.
Michael, given your own experience, what would you go across and tell your 20-year-old self today?
I would say think large, go bigger, no fear, consistency as I had, but even more about relationships. Additionally, utilizing software to assist in compliance filings and IPO filings is of extreme value. And that's an offering I've only really been able to offer to my clients, one of which we brought out about 10 years ago for compliance filings. That's called Toppan Merrill Bridge. And now we have a product for IPOs called Quinn. Having those products out years ago would have been very beneficial to our clients.
Got it. How do you stay on top of information about changes that are happening in the market today, Michael? What are some go to go resources for you that you would want to recommend our audience?
Well, I'd say number one, the Wall Street Journal. Read that cover to cover daily. Additionally, there's a lot of information out there on the internet and subscription models, whether it's Merger Market and others that can keep you up to date with what's happening in the marketplace. It's very important to be on top of announcements of deals and what's happening at all times so you could be the first one to jump on top of that, looking to win that business.
Yeah. Michael, if you had some resources which you would direct our audience to get better at sales, could you help share them with us?
Sure. I think four books that are a must read. Number one is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Two, Fanatical Prospecting. Three, Never Split the Difference. And four, The Go Giver, which was actually gifted to me by Shai Stern and Seth Farbman when I started in this business 20 years ago.
Got it. If somebody today is trying to build a career on the service provider side of capital markets or an issuer choosing a filing partner, what should they prioritize?
I would prioritize expertise, knowledge, experience, reliability, and availability.
Got it. Any parting words for our audience today, Mike, that you would have for us?
It's been a great experience to be on this podcast with you and share what I've learned over the last 20 years doing sales for Toppan Merrill, a financial printer. I look forward to the opportunity to share this with friends, clients, and get the name out there, share my perspective on the market and the industry, and more importantly, would love to win some IPOs, some deal work from this podcast. And, I work with the best people. We have the best service. We are the best company in the space and look forward to anyone reaching out to me, 201-410-6500. Have a great day.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you for joining me in this podcast.